a passionate instigator and dynamic problem solver. Dr. Kevin Ross Emery, the host of the Dr. Kevin Radio Show, will be taking you outside the box, behind the curtain, and identifying the load of BS we are fed every day. And now, Dr. Kevin.
Hello, 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 and welcome to the first show of the month. On July 1st, the first day of the month. On the month that is forever known as the month that we celebrate the most important birthday in the world. And I mean mine. Don't give me any of this U.S. crap. Mine. July 4th is my birthday. It's my day. Welcome to the Dr. Kevin Show. And just remember, when you're eating and drinking and watching fireworks, you're all doing it to celebrate me. I just don't want you to lose sight of that. But as always, on the first Thursday of every month, we have none other than Matt Connarton. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I believe that film, Born on the 4th of July, that's about you, isn't it?
It's about an earlier incarnation of me. It's when I looked more like Tom Cruise. Was it Tom Cruise that was in that?
I believe so. Yeah.
No,
so it's
I'm
about you.
To...
I didn't say it was you in the movie. I said it's about you.
Okay. Yeah. I'm a little bit closer to Sean Connery these days. When he was still alive, mind you.
I was going to say not too close. I hope. It probably smells.
Yeah. I'd say that would be a good thing. So, anyways, on this first Thursday, first of all, remember, people, you can call in and be part of the conversation. You can call in at 202-570-7057. That's 202-570-7057. And today's guest, as always, on the first of the month is Matt Connarton from Matt Connarton Unleashed. You can find him from 4 to 6, Monday through Friday at WNNH 95.3, or you can go to mattconnerton.com or IPMNation.com, and you can watch the show live, and you can comment on his show as well. He tends to highlight more on politics and world events, and he comes in once a month to school us on what's going on in the world, in the world that we tend to, not always talk about on the Dr. Kevin Show, because there are many worlds out there. So welcome, Matt, and how are you doing these days?
Oh, doing well. Summer's my favorite time of year. I actually don't mind the heat that much. I certainly prefer it to winter, although I am getting legitimately worried because I think the other day it was 108 degrees in a town in Canada. That's not good. So I'm a little concerned.
Oh, I read that there was one that was 121.
Oh, my God. In Canada?
In Canada.
Oh, my God.
Yes. They had that heat dome.
Scary. That is scary.
And I think Portland, Oregon hit 116.
Jesus.
Yeah. Now, that heat dome.
Oh, you're right. I just looked it up. A record high of 121 degrees in Canada.
Yep.
Wow.
That's what I thought.
In British Columbia.
So,
Yeah.
It is scary times. But, of course, climate change is just libtard mythology, just so you know.
Well, I was going to say, if it makes you feel any better, my Republican friends, or at least the ones who still speak to me, have reassured me that climate change is all a hoax and there's nothing to worry about. So there you go.
Yeah, well, considering most of the leanings and proclivities, these heat waves might just be here to give the Republicans a preview of where they're spending eternity.
Oh my!
According to their belief systems.
Right.
So, yes. Well, I put out a weekly newsletter now. Every week is a different theme. One is I promote this show and my guests throughout the month, including you, of course. One is my podcast, Loving, Laughing, and Alive, my twice-a-month podcast, who this month we're having Dreamer Denver on, who was Bob Denver, Gilligan's Island's wife, who he founded the foundation with after they had their autistic child and stopped performing and doing things to stay home and take care of that child and create a nonprofit foundation and do good things in the world. And she's going to be on the show this month.
Oh, very good.
So I'm excited to talk to her. But anyways, but I also have one that I do every week. And if anybody is interested in being on the Dr. Kevin mailing list and get these emails we're talking about, you can go to mydrkevin.com and just sign up to be on the mailing list, and we'll get these to you. But I always do a Talking the Tea with Dr. K, where I'm just picking out some subject I want to talk about. And this month, my thing was, it's not just a number. Because I'm so tired of people going, you know, when somebody says how old they are and then they go, but it's just a number. It's just a number. No, it's not just a number. It's bragging rights. You have lived that long. You have survived. Maybe you might have some wisdom, though that is not guaranteed. But we buy into all sorts of bigotry and ageism when we fall victim of, oh, it's just a number and I'm still just as... No, you're not. You're not as strong. Your energy is not quite as high. Your resilience is probably a little lower than yours was when you were 20, when you're 60. That's what happens. But you should be wiser. You shouldn't have to work so hard. You shouldn't have to be making excuses. So the question is, why are we training everybody to this ageist belief that somehow you should be apologetic for your age? I mean, do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I do. Yeah, absolutely.
So anyways.
I think, though, too, when people say, well, it's just a number, I don't know if it's so much as apologizing as more just, you know, I think because some people think that, I don't know. I mean, some people think that once you get to a certain age, you can't do certain things like maybe change careers, you know, or change political philosophies. And so I think that, you know, that's one of the positive things about saying, well, it's just a number. It's like, you know, age should not restrict you from doing certain things just because you're expected to be older, and therefore you have to be exactly how you've always been. It's too late to change directions or change careers or you know, get married or get divorced or whatever, you know.
But underneath that is supporting the fact of an ageist concept that says you can and can't or shouldn't do something based on an age, whatever that age is. Mm-hmm. It's still the whole idea is to not buy into the concept. I always remember on my 41st birthday, because I had a big, huge 40th birthday party, and I had signs, I'm not over the hill, I own the hill, and all sorts of other Mart Alec type things. And I told everybody, anybody that comes and shows up, because when I turned 40, the big thing was when you turned 40, you got, you got all sorts of like adult care products, and you got all sorts of, oh, I'm sorry, your life is over cards. And now I think they do it closer to 50 or 60. I think it's moved up a decade or two. I'm not sure, but I believe it's not considered 40 anymore. But when I turned 40, it was. And I said to everybody, because we were doing a lobster clam bake at that dinner, and I said to everybody, I said, if you show up with a, oh, you're so old gift or card, I will march your ass right back out to your car without feeding you, and I'll have your lobster, your clams, and your potatoes myself, and you can hit the road. So there's it. I don't put on this crap that 40 means anything other than I've had 40 years to possibly get smarter, wiser, and work better in the world and know myself better. And so I started at 40 saying that. And of course, last year was my 60th. So, but at 41, I decided I was going to learn how to do skateboarding. I think at 42, I took up mountain biking. At 43, I took up snowboarding because that's when it came to me that I was drawn to do it. And so I did it. And so, but anyway, so that was the time. But the reason I brought it up was because there was a tie-in to the hypocrisy of these, these hell-bent religions. The hypocrisy of these hell-bent religions, Matt, who are literally living the actions that is everything that is antithetical to what their religion stands for. Literally.
Mm-hmm.
Always be a good person, always be kind. Oh yeah, well, you failed those two right off the front. Always be accepting, always be welcome the stranger. Yeah, you flunked that one too. Don't judge, yeah, you be judged. Yeah, you flunked that one.
Oh yeah.
But one of the things, and I'm not going to go into it in depth. If anybody wants to see it, they can sign up because it's not coming out till next week, I don't think. So it hasn't actually hit the emails yet. But one of the things that I said is, the really sad part is, most of them really don't know if there's a heaven. They don't know if they really believe it. When they're that zealot and that fundamental, they scream so loud, they shove it down people's throats so much, they become such bullies about it, so they don't have to listen to the little voice that says, is that really what happens? Because I don't know. Because
right.
If you really thought that's what happened, you would not be engaging in any of those actions. My actions tell you you're scared to crap about dying. You have no idea what's going to go. And if you even entertain the idea of hell, you're probably pretty sure you're going to end up in it. But it's their own fear of death that drives them to this obnoxious zealotness.
Oh, yeah.
That has now infused our political system of idiots. So anyways, I will get off the soapbox now. For the moment.
Oh, no. I agree. Well, you've heard me say, I think that most people who call themselves Christians practice what I call ironic Christianity, where they go through the motions of, talking about how much they love Christ and they go to church and everything, while actively having as little to do as possible with anything Jesus actually said. It's kind of like they treat Jesus like he's the crazy old drunk uncle at Thanksgiving dinner. We love him, but we're going to try not to pay too much attention to him.
Well, he did turn water into wine, so I guess there is some justification for that.
Yes.
You did say, hey, Jesus liked to toss back a few. So anyways, moving, let's just see how much more, what's the word I'm looking for, I can be around the religion?
Blasphemous.
Blasphemous. Oh, that's one word. I was thinking of another one, but I can't tell you what it is.
Oh.
Yeah. But, so, what's been the hot topics on your show since we last met, and what do you want to talk about on this show? I've got a couple of topics, but I'm going to wait and see what you bring to the table, and then if you don't bring the couple that I want to make sure we talk about, I'll bring them up in a later segment. So,
I'll tell you what, the hottest topic on my show, I don't know if you even want to talk about, because it's not something that's been in politics. It's something to do with, I'm not even going to say his name, but there's a certain individual that we got mixed up with who turned out to be very racist and anti-Semitic and whatnot, who likes to call into my show. And we started calling him out on his BS online, and he's suspected to be mentally ill. So some people have kind of made me the villain for calling that individual out, because apparently some people think that if someone is mentally ill, you have to give them a pass on whatever they say and do. That's taken up a lot of time on my show recently, but I don't know if you really want to talk about that. But, yeah.
Okay, wait a second. I want to make a comment on that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Having a pass for mentally ill. That's what I heard you say. So when did Trump start calling into your show? Go ahead.
Oh boy,
I couldn't resist.
I know. I wish the president would call. It would be an honor to speak to him. But yeah, I think we've put that to bed. But yes, speaking of Trump, today indictments for Weisselberg and the Trump organization, but not Trump himself. But this could be. I brought up on my show today. I was talking about it, and I said I've said all along the true threat to Donald Trump in terms of, for example, what I presume is a desire to not end up in prison. The true legal threat to Donald Trump was never the Mueller probe or whether he colluded with the Russians or any of that. It's always been the state of New York, the state of New York Attorney General's office and the DA in Manhattan. And, that's the true threat to Trump. And it would appear that it has begun to play out. It's very exciting.
Well, tax evasion is what sent Al Capone to jail.
That is true. That's how they get you. Yeah.
Yep. And to some degree, there is part of this that falls under that whole tax evasion thing. It's also how they got Leona Helmsman.
Yes.
Yeah. So we know there's nothing about Trump that's lily white. But if we're going to talk about varying degrees of absolutely filthy dirty, his financial dealings have got to top the list.
Yeah. Well, remember, I mean, it was a New York judge who ruled that Trump and the Trump family can never again start and run a charity or sit on the board of any charity because they got caught self-dealing. So they're out of the charity business, which they did, in fact, treat as a business. So no more of that.
Yes. So that is the sign. When we get back, I want to talk more about this particular question, this particular comment. I'd like to take it a little further into the future, see your psychic abilities. But we'll be right back here on the Dr. Kevin Show.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes. Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers, pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
Coping-19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
If you're feeling increasingly lonely right now, you're not alone. It's totally normal. Even though we may not be able to get together in person, connecting virtually with friends and family still gives you a chance to interact with people and may help raise your spirits. Join a virtual book club, set up group text chats, or online video coffee breaks with coworkers.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
Hello, and welcome back to the Dr. Kevin Show here on OMTimes, where we're changing the world, wait for it, one ohm at a time. This is a live call-in show, so if you'd like to talk to me or today's co-host, I'm not going to call him a guest because he's here the first Thursday of every month, Matt Connarton from Matt Connarton Unleashed. If you have any questions for me or my co-host, Matt Connarton, you can call in at 202-570-7057. That's 202-570-7057. And we're happy to engage you in conversation, answer questions. We just ask that you are respectful. So, Matt, what do you, because you called this, and I've on this, we don't always agree on everything. Sometimes you're not bright enough to be on my side, but besides that, no. But I've always been right in line with you that this is what was going to really get him. But how do you think, because I've got some thoughts, but I want to hear what you think, because you stay much more in the loop on this stuff than I do. How do you think this is likely to play out? Because there were some serious charges that came against him. This wasn't, these are prison-based charges.
Yeah.
I think Alan.
Yeah, I think Alan Weisselberg will probably flip on Trump. And if they can get to Trump, they're going to try to get to Trump. I think the possibility, I mean, it would be surreal in a way, but I think the possibility of Trump ending up charged and indicted and convicted, I think it's really possible. It really could happen. I mean, even if he's in prison, he'll still be the Republican nominee in 2024. But I say that only half kidding. Yeah, I think there's a very real possibility of this playing out that way. I really do.
Okay. Hey, Matt.
Hey. Yes.
Yes. QAnon heard what we were saying, and they disconnected my phone call because they were afraid. So just
maybe
be aware.
It's the deep state. Right.
Oh, it's the deep state of mental delusion. So I heard you say that he will still. Yeah. Well. So I heard you say that he would be the 2020. You think he would still try to be the 2024 nominee?
Oh yes, definitely. Yeah. Even if he's in prison, I think you can't, because Lyndon LaRouche, I remember, used to run for the Democratic nomination from prison. He would be. I remember he was on the ballot here in New Hampshire in 1992. I recall, because that was the first election that I was eligible to vote in. So you can still run for office if you're in prison. I don't know if you can be elected, but I'm sure he'll be, if he's able to get on the ballot, I'm sure he'll be the nominee, even if he's in prison. Republicans will assume that, they'll begin to use the term political prisoner in an entirely new, ironic but entirely unself-aware way. And they will declare that, the Democrats have put President Trump in prison, and they must elect him. QAnon will probably come up with some sort of way that, they'll say that if Trump is elected, he will then be forced to be released from prison and can continue on to be president or something, however that plays out. But yes, he'll be the Republican nominee no matter what, even if he's in the who's cow. Now,
Lyndon LaRouche was doing his campaign from prison, but he wasn't allowed to go on the campaign trail and campaign from prison because he didn't get enough votes to do anything. But that would be an interesting question. They'll have to set something up. Maybe Trump can do Zoom calls from his cell with all of his supporters. They'll figure it out.
Okay. So it'll be fascinating to see.
I'm thinking that what we might see is that we see Alan start to flip, because he's in his early 70s. Yep. We're talking at least 10 years. And depending on whether these are federal or state charges, if Trump, oh God, I hate to even say this, if Trump got elected in 2024, if there's state charges, he can't pardon state charges.
Correct.
So the next thing is, but I'm wondering if it's going to go Allen, and then you're going to see that his initial flip is going to be towards the kids.
Could be.
I wonder.
Could be.
Because and I could be way off, but I wanted to talk about this possibility is he gives them something that gives them something bigger. So he doesn't have to completely turn on Trump. But if he turned on Trump Jr. and the, God, I can't even remember his name, the other one.
Eric.
And Eric. It is Eric.
Yes.
But if he turned on them or Ivanka, then we have a different, then the question is, will they flip on their dad? Because he would certainly throw them, he'll throw them to the lions.
Yeah. I would assume they would flip on their dad. I mean, they're young. They don't want to spend time in prison. I mean, why wouldn't they? I'm sure they would.
Yeah. Well, there's already some poking around because now Ivanka, it's looking like talking to the event planner for the Trump administration inaugural event that Ivanka lied under oath. And
I remember that.
That's always enough to, yeah. And so that's always enough to get some ball rolling. But I think it's going to be a step process. I think that Allen is going to not necessarily turn on Trump, but will turn on one of the kids to keep himself out of jail. And they would take that to some degree because those kids are going to turn on their dad in a heartbeat because they're his kids,
Right. Self-preservation. Yeah.
They learned at the feet of a master.
That's right.
So anyways, but that's what I wanted to, I just wanted to throw that in. I am kind of looking at a 2022 with us seeing the kids now in indictment and a 2023 pushing it up to Trump. But at that point he will have declared, and they're going to look for a loophole saying, well, he's running for president, so you can't go after him. But as far as I know, from everything I've heard, that loophole does not exist. There is nothing in running for president that stops you being politically being pursued by the law.
Correct.
So,
right.
Okay.
Yeah. He's got to be very nervous. Very, very nervous.
Oh, yeah. And, he's a little of that shine is wearing off. Now, what do you think about the fact that Liz is going on Nancy's committee?
Oh, I love it. Liz Cheney, somebody who's very conservative, and I'm sure she and I agree on very little. But I'll tell you what, her political career is likely over. She has sacrificed herself for this cause because she refuses to go along with the big lie. She will be primaried in the next election. She's done. But obviously, Republicans are furious with her for not going along with the big lie. But she continues to stand on her integrity and the truth. And again, I probably agree with her on very little. She's very conservative. She's one of the most conservative members of Congress, possibly the most. But she's got guts. I admire her for having the integrity to refuse to go along. And this is great. She has my respect and my support on this, and I think it's a great thing.
Well, and from a political strategy standpoint, if any part of this actually could ever do anything to bring Trump down, and they can't have Trump as the center of the party, if he gets eliminated out of it through this process, or people start to turn on him, because that cult of personality is starting to wear a little thin. That's what I'm hearing, and maybe I'm hearing it incorrectly. He still has some ones, but, you know, the Michigan Republicans came out and basically said, be careful who you're listening to and their fantasies or something like that. Yeah. Arizona did not turn out the way that they wanted to, and they probably turned the state a little closer to blue than red in it being a purple state, because they've lost so many of the independents with pushing the Trump lie of the lost election.
Yeah.
And, you know, they keep on talking about all of these people moving into Texas and Texas getting all of this power. But a lot of these people moving into Texas are likely to make Texas more purple.
Yeah, they're moving from California. That's the big move now, is California to Texas. Yeah.
So it's going to be an interesting couple of elections coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So, this committee, is it going to go anywhere, or is it just going to be a bust? What do you think?
Well, it's going to go somewhere. I mean, there's nothing the Republicans, I think, can really do to prevent it from going anywhere. You know, they're going to continue to try to push the narrative that this whole thing is pointless because January 6th was just, you know, tourists excitedly touring the Capitol. You know, they're going to continue to push the big lie. And as long as the base of the party continues to believe the big lie, that's all that matters to them. I was saying on the show recently, I remember when the Republicans used to talk about having a big tent. They wanted to have a big tent party, you know, room for everybody. Now they seem committed to shrinking it. They seem committed to shrinking the party down to only people who are loyal to Trump. And if you're not fully loyal to Trump and willing to pledge your allegiance to Trump, they don't want you. So they seem to want a small tent party, and they seem to be happy to shrink it down. And I think as the January 6th committee goes forward, the Republican Party will probably continue to shrink. There will be more people who leave because they're just not on board with all of this. I don't know if it'll be a lot of people, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to see them switching. You won't see a lot of these people switching over to Democrat, I don't think. You're going to see a huge swell in the independent party.
Right.
And then we're going to see a fight for the independent party, which has traditionally more sided with the Democrats, has a tendency to, than the Republicans. Usually they count on the independents are going to vote with the Democrats. I mean, that's what I have heard for years. But the other interesting political play out here is if the independent party becomes much more solid purple, then some people who are uncomfortable will be able to vote for an independent that will vote for their important issues, Republican, but won't get sucked into the nonsense issues or the fantasies or all of the stuff that they're uncomfortable with by the small tent Republicans. So it's going to be interesting. There's a lot of shifts and changes coming, and I don't think any of us can predict exactly how it's going to play out.
Yeah, it is very hard to predict. I don't know if this statistic still holds. Last I knew, though, 41% of the national electorate is independent, either Republican or Democrat. And it's not something you hear a lot. You know, the mainstream media doesn't talk about that because whether it's Fox on the right or MSNBC on the left, it's not necessarily helpful to remind people of that, you know, in terms of the way that these networks play to their audiences. But yeah, 41% of the national electorate undeclared. And that's really where these elections are won or lost. Republicans will tend to vote for the Republican, and Democrats will tend to vote for the Democrats. So it's really all up to what the independents decide to do. That's who you have to market to. And that's not going to change.
As they get more polarized, from the progressive Democrats to the ultra-conservative, small something Republicans, do you think we could possibly see a rise in more moderates because they will draw the independent vote?
God, I hope so. Well, I'd like to see more moderate Republicans, certainly. I feel like there aren't that many. Although I guess it doesn't, in some ways it doesn't even matter anymore, being conservative or being moderate if you're a Republican. All that matters is your allegiance to Trump. He is their Messiah. So I don't know if that paradigm of moderate or conservative even works anymore in the Republican Party. I think it really does all just come down to, are you with Trump? And if you're not with Trump, then you're not a real Republican.
You're a rhino.
Yeah. Well, if you look at what happened to Liz Cheney, a very conservative, a consistent, dependable conservative Republican, replaced in leadership by Elise Stefanik, who is, I think, still fairly conservative, but closer to being a moderate than Liz Cheney is. But they would rather have Elise Stefanik in leadership because of her commitment and allegiance to Trump. So they'd rather have her than Liz Cheney, who's very conservative. So, yeah, I think it's all about Trump. It's not even a matter of moderate or conservative. It's just about, do you pledge your allegiance to Trump?
Yep. So what else do you see going on in the political world? Oh, we're going to have Matt answer that question. What's going on? But right now, we're going to take our second break, and then we'll be back on the Dr. Kevin Show with Matt Connarton, talking about what's going on in the world and politics.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Vox Novus, the new voice. Vox Novus, the new dimension. Vox Novus, thought and movement leaders who will share from their experience and offer tools to help us navigate our rapidly changing world. My name is Victor Furman. Join me every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio for Vox Novus, the new voice.
If I could be you.
And you could be me.
For just 1 hour.
If you could find a way.
To get inside.
Each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Hello, and welcome back to the last segment of the Dr. Kevin Show on the first day of the month of July. And I will spare you all from singing I'm a Yankee Doodle Dandy. But I just want you to know the thought crossed my mind. With today's co-host, Matt Connarton. Matt, so what else do you think of note is going on either in the world or the political world, or just the world in general right now, that you would like to bring up for today's Dr. Kevin Show?
Well, I do talk a lot on my show about big tech. I'm worried about this new legislation that's working its way through that would. I get very nervous. I mean, some of this is well-meaning and may actually be helpful, but I don't know about you, and I don't hear anyone else really saying this, but I get really nervous whenever Congress is voting on anything to do with technology, anything to do with the internet, anything to do with these tech companies, because I always say this on my show. If you go on YouTube and you look up any Senate or House hearing on anything having to do with tech, or just as an example, if you look up, say, Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook testifying before Congress about anything, and you listen to the questions that are being asked and the follow-up questions and whatnot, you begin to realize very quickly that these people are voting on things and considering things, implementing legislation on things and so on, about things that they really don't know anything about and clearly have no understanding of. And I find it terrifying. And I'm not really sure that I like 85-year-old Chuck Grassley of Iowa, not to sound ageist, as we were discussing earlier, but I'm not sure I want him voting on any of this stuff. And it has me concerned, as someone who, I have a website, IPMNation.com, and we have a lot of content, and we're content creators, and I'm a broadcaster, and I work in e-commerce and all of it, and all of which could be affected by some of this current legislation. And I just don't trust any of these people with voting on any of this stuff because I don't think they have any idea what the hell they're doing. And it's of great concern to me. And I don't think it gets talked about enough. But these people make me nervous. They don't know what they're doing. I want them to keep their hands off of the internet, I guess is what I'm saying. Unless it's about making the internet more available and accessible to people. I'd prefer that they not do anything else. That's my take.
So how do you feel about the whole monopoly aspect of it? Do you think that there are unfair practices going on, which is why the Antitrust Act was passed back when just a few robber barons had tied up, a great amount of power and wealth in this country? Do you think there's some of that goes on in tech? Does that fall under the auspice of that? I mean, I agree they shouldn't be voting on what they are clueless about. But if they didn't vote on what they were clueless about, a large part of Congress would never get a chance to vote at all.
Yeah, true. Well, so here, I would say, I mean, obviously that goes on in tech, and I understand the need for antitrust laws. The thing is, though, what these folks don't understand sometimes is, I was reading an article, actually, I might be able to pull it up, from Reason.com. When you get into tech, if you start shutting down, so the legislation that's working its way through now, just to give you some examples, and I'll see if I can find the article, but if I can't, I'm sure I can remember some of this. Some of the consequences of what they're trying to do, for example, if you run a website like Amazon.com, and I know nobody wants to cry any tears for Amazon, certainly, but, you might not be able, if Amazon, I can't find the article, but let me see if I can do this from memory. So according to this new legislation, Amazon Prime Video would have to go away, because with Amazon Prime Video, Amazon gives priority and makes films available from, who did they just buy? They just bought a major film company. So anyway, they make those videos because they own that film company. They make those videos available at a discount through their Amazon Prime Video service. What this new legislation would do is say, well, websites can no longer give anybody priority. So Amazon could no longer give those videos priority, so Amazon Prime Video goes away. Cell phone companies can no longer give certain apps priority. So when you go to buy a cell phone, when you get a new phone, it's got all these apps built into it already, so you don't have to download them. And they're, it's usually stuff that you would find useful. And the apps that are on it will depend on whether you get an Android or an iPhone, for example. Well, if you get an iPhone, if you get any Apple product, you're going to find apps on it that Apple either owns or they have some sort of business relationship with. Well, that goes away. If this legislation passes and is signed into law, Apple or Android or whoever no longer has the right to give preference to certain companies that they do business with. And therefore, your phone's not going to come with any apps on it. You're going to have to go and download whatever apps you think you might need, because you're not going to have iTunes already on your iPhone. I understand what they're trying to do, but they're screwing it all up and making everything worse, not better. And I just don't want them messing with any of this. They don't know what they're doing, Dr. Kevin. They don't know what they're doing. They're not going to help anybody with any of this.
No, I agree. I also look and, I think that there are things like prioritizing the bandwidth that you get access to based on your cable provider and the prioritizing of stuff. I think that there's some of that stuff that crosses lines.
Sure. I agree.
But again, they're not being targeted because they're not intelligent about it. They didn't educate themselves about it to the point where they can speak intelligently about it. And on one hand, I was talking at the beginning of the show about, of course, I said at least 4 times in the video I shot about it's not just a number. Was that you have the opportunity to be wiser doesn't mean you are. Mm-hmm. And I still think that the average age of Congress is way too high to be serving this country well, because they've aged out of a place where they can stay on top of what, the 20th century was the fastest moving century in recorded history, and the 21st century is probably going to be even faster as far as changes, updates, things like this. They don't have any critical thinking skills or comparative to be able to make these assessments, and therefore should not be in the position to do it. So I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think instead of saying you have to be, you have to be a certain age to run for office, I think they should start to say at a certain age you have to leave office.
Right.
But then again, I'm a big term limits fan.
Yeah.
And I don't buy this hogwash about the voters. That's, it's so funny because some of what I say is exactly in alignment with how they're trying to get away with some of these restrictive measures for voter registration in places like Georgia and Florida and Texas. They're sliming in the Jim Crow laws. And some of the language they're using was the exact language that was being used only in an updated version, but it's the language that they were using in Congress in the 1850s to justify, black enslavement, and that they, and things like this. I have this daily newsletter I get from Heather Cox Richardson, I believe. and she's really good. She does her homework. I'm always impressed with how much homework that she does on this stuff. But like she will take what they're saying to justify. Yeah, Heather Cox Richardson. She will take what they are saying to justify these voter laws, and she'll put it beside what they were saying in the 1850s to justify slavery, and it ain't all that different.
Yeah, I believe that.
And, you know, they're just taking the turn around the table again. And they've just, they've switched. Of course, the Republican Party was born to eliminate slavery, and the modern day Republican Party stays in power by making sure that it oppresses, the people of color and, minority voters and people that don't fall in a very narrow bandwidth by jury rigging and gerrymandering and all sorts of stuff. And there's no accountability. And we are not the same 50 states, 40 states, 30 states that we were 300 years ago. We are not those people anymore. We're at a different age. Well, 250 years ago, whatever. We are a different age. We are at a different place. There is a different set of considerations. And when they trot out these ancient, decrepit ideas that they're trying to twist around to justify bigotry, it's still, at the core, justifying bigotry and needs to be called out. But, God, it's just scary. So yeah. I agree with you. I want to bring up this story because I just found this story so disturbing. The Bill Cosby story.
Oh, yes.
And it's really hard that there was, I was a big Bill Cosby fan. I mean, I loved him from his earliest days. I loved him through all of his shows. I loved his comedy. I loved the characters he played, which of course was no relationship with the person that he was. And when you have clear evidence that somebody had committed a crime, that they get out of the kind of crimes he created on a technicality because somebody didn't know what they were doing in legal and opened up an opportunity, is such a disgrace. And it just really bothers me. What was your take when all of that broke?
I was shocked. I had no idea that anything like that was coming. And when the news broke, it was quite a shock to me. I haven't had a chance to look at this terribly closely. I mean, I do know that, he's pretty old. It doesn't look like he's in great health, and his career is over. His career is just absolutely over. So I'm not too worried about him spending or not spending the rest of his life in prison, or I think it was 3 to 10 years was the sentence, and he had served 2 years. But I guess, like I said, I haven't had a chance to look at it too closely, but this was a trial. He was convicted on one woman, right? So it's not like it's the totality of the more than 60 women who have accused him. So assuming that, and I cannot believe that all 60 of these women are lying. So, it is disgraceful to see him get out on a technicality, but, that's our criminal justice system. Sometimes it doesn't always, things don't always break the way that we think they should. It's just the reality of it.
I can't remember exactly what the connection was, but I know that there was some kind of connection that the guy that promised him something that I don't think he should have promised him, but he promised him in writing, if you do this, blah, 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 went on to serve as a lawyer for the Trump people in some capacity.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Of course, there was some kind of crossover there, and I can't remember exactly what it was. But what I find so disturbing, I guess, and, I'm going to tell you where my mind went. And I don't think the guy that screwed up Cosby was anything probably as an idiot. I don't think it was insidious. But if I was strategizing as one of the Trump kids or Trump himself, I would be working very hard to put somebody in on a mole, somebody in that has some underlying sympathies that if they screw up one piece of paperwork could mean that they could all be found guilty and go away on a technicality. Mm-hmm. That was my immediate nightmare. That you get to do whatever you want, and if you have the right people in the right positions, they can literally let you get away with murder on a technicality. And there is something that still tells me that there is something still inherently broken in our justice system.
Right.
That but those are my thoughts. So I'm going to see you in August. Now, will by the first Thursday in August, will Trump be president again? Do you know?
Sometime in August. I don't know if it's the first Thursday.
Okay. I will talk to you then. Matt, have a good July. Have a good happy 4th of July. And I will talk to you next month and give Jenny my love.
I will. Thanks, Dr. Kevin. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.